They're talking about trying to make it better. Other people come here from other parts of the world. They can't believe the state of our subways. Well, in just a moment, we want you to hear what WMCA listener Bob Warren wrote about the subways, and wrote it in song. Those of you who have to ride the MTA, and you have no choice, what you ought to do is get one of those Walkmans and listen to this song so you don't feel too bad, because this is like being in the Gulag Archipelago. This is like being tortured for some crime you didn't commit. The most dehumanizing, here we have that girl against pornography. She talks about dehumanizing. What could be more dehumanizing than having to ride the MTA? But listen to this song. Now, we don't play music on WMCA unless it has a definite message. See if you get the message in this song.
It's oh such fun to take a ride on the MTA, where everyone is terrified on the MTA. And to spice up the crime, there's graffiti and grime and a mess of neglect and decay. You don't know fright till you go day or night on the MTA. You meet abject and pure defeat on the MTA. If you expect to find a seat on the MTA, if disaster's your dish, then you just couldn't wish for a bigger or better display than what you face every day taking place on the MTA. It's 9 degrees or 95 on the MTA. You either freeze or roast alive on the MTA. And to lighten your purse as the service gets worse, they keep raising the ransom you pay. To risk your neck on some broken down wreck on the MTA. The danger's great, your chances small on the MTA. You get there late or not at all on the MTA. If you've never been mugged while the onlookers shrug, don't despair, this could just be the day. So place your bet and play rush hour roulette on the MTA. On the MTA.
Next stop at the GG is hell. And I don't know why one newspaper, who shall go nameless, feels that with all the news that happens, this rates as a headline. Let's talk about newspapers. Let's talk about American journalism. Or is this Australian journalism? Or United Kingdom journalism? Anyway, it says, here's a headline in one particular paper. Queen Liz in rage at son. Subhead, orders him to dump New York-born nudie actress. I tell you, they're really scraping. They're really scraping. I wouldn't even line my bird cage with this if I had a bird. And if the bird had a cage. I want to congratulate the mayor of our city, and he will continue to be the mayor because of what happened on the 27th of September. The mayor called for the execution of the Tylenol killer. But, of course, it's meaningless that he calls for the execution because we don't have the guts to execute people who should be executed in this country. So it's just words, Eddie, just words. Eliminate the city council completely. Eliminate the borough presidencies. What the heck do we have to have a borough president for?
Not need that at all.
All they do is run around cutting ribbons.
And they just make money. I mean, they make
yeah. And it isn't just their salaries. It's the salary that it's the money that goes for staff, for maintenance of office, perquisites, limousine, all that mishigas.
And the state
never happened.
Right.
But just to maintain a bunch of leeches who
that's right.
masquerade as politicians, public servants, whatnot. It costs us an awful lot of money. There's no doubt about it. Straight ahead special edition. I'll be joining you for that on WMCA. Get Gaddafi. The trial was going on. The person who was charged with pushing Reenie Katz to the tracks from the subway. And she lost her hand. Do you remember that? And the shock I expressed when the individual who was charged with her crime was acquitted. Didn't see how in the world he could be acquitted. Did you see where he was arrested just the other day? For doing some things on the subway platform? Did you see that? Huh? Makes you wonder. So many times people beat the rap. So many times people are acquitted, and then a short while later, they do something which is so reminiscent of the crime they beat the rap on. And did you see where a Brooklyn mother who admitted starving, now listen to this, she admitted starving her 11-month-old son to death, and you know what happened to her? What do you suppose happened? I'll tell you what. She was given 5 years probation. Now, that sentence was called by Liz Holtzman, the district attorney of Kings County, a slap on the wrist for her horrendous crime. That's not even a slap on the wrist, Liz. And yet, a guy I know, Supreme Court Justice Joe Lombardo, who had announced July 12th that he would grant probation to April Illand, 24 years old, of Borough Park, made the sentence official yesterday despite Liz's objections. Now, how could a judge do that? Well, every time a judge does what Lombardo did, he's giving the signal to other people that it's okay to commit murder in this country. Freeze agreement with the Soviet Union. That's essentially what it says. What Linus Pauling is saying is that what we should do is announce a freeze on our own. Just say we're not going to build any more atomic weapons, nuclear weapons. And he made one statement which boggles the mind. He made several very interesting statements, to say the least, but one that particularly boggles the mind is he says, the Soviet Union follows our example. And I can only say with all due respect to Linus Pauling, I wish he were right. I wish they did. I don't think they do. Do you feel about this? Do you think it's just another cockamamie self-indulgence? Just a hangover of the anti-Vietnam War years? Do you think Linus Pauling should have quit while he was ahead? That would have been way back in 1954. Do you think that maybe he's taking too many vitamin C's? Certainly. And why do we pay so much attention to hostage holders? Why do we dignify them with constant reports? That's what they want. And I can only say that I hope some sharpshooter gets Larry Gardner right between the eyes. I see no reason to take such great care to spare him. I said it, and I'm glad.
Very quick comment about Linus Pauling.
Yes.
I just don't think that he's paying any attention to the political realities that underlie the reasons why we're producing these weapons. And that's that. And I've had a lot of arguments with anti-nuke people, and I find them to be, on the whole, childish, selfish, and unrealistic.
Well, Linus Pauling is being consistent because way back in 1962, he called the then President John Kennedy quite a few names, and he walked in front of the White House for a long time carrying a sign saying, Mr. Kennedy, we have no right to test.
Well, I think he's being consistently unrealistic. But in any case, what I really wanted to tell you was this. I just think that the United Nations should be kicked out of this country. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that we put up with enough. Because this is like the straw that broke the camel's back. There's an article in today's Times, and I know that you don't like people to read things on the air, but I'll just read the headline, UN panel attacks press coverage. And the first paragraph reads, a group of senior officials here has criticized Western reporting of the United Nations as grossly inaccurate and praised Soviet journalism for systematic coverage that generates continuing support. Now, what are you supposed to make of this?
Well, I think this is typical of what the United Nations has been.
It's become too much, though.
Well, they're talking about, I think they have a staff of about 800, don't they?
30 million bucks a year, too.
Yeah, and they are catering to, well, let's face it, they're catering to a lot of elements in the world that are anti-American or, at the very least, unsympathetic to our cause. Both parties. This is not information that only the president and some of his aides see. Members of both parties see that. Now, I want to tell you, if it were more than 10.1%, and they said it were 10.1%, Tip O'Neill and people like that would holler to high heavens. That's number one. Number two, if anything, the unemployment rate is probably lower because we have an underground economy due to the fact that a lot of cheats, a lot of chiselers are working off the books. Business Week magazine documents anywhere from $200 to $400 billion underground economy. So that must mean a lot of people are working that don't officially list themselves as working. Straight ahead is Special Edition. We'll be joining you for that. And get Gaddafi. Does the fate of the earth concern you? Do you really feel that the fate of the earth and your own inevitable rendezvous with the man with the scythe have anything in common? Oh, you say, what is he talking about? What rendezvous? Well, you know, in the broad spectrum of things on your kilocycle dial and your megacycle dial, in the broad spectrum of things, you can get people who, and usually this type is on in the morning, who, even if the sky were falling, would say, hey, it looks as though we don't have to put up with a high ceiling anymore. Those of you who like low ceilings, you're going to be happy. Kind of, sort of, because everything's kind of, sort of, to a lot of people. But then, of course, you can get the bald-faced, unadulterated truth right here on this program. Some people feel that we may all go together with this planet called Earth. And some of them are very sincere. Others, I think, are just manifesting their neurosis. And if they didn't have one thing to shriek and protest about, they'd have something else to answer these questions. But, you know, having impressive background is not any guarantee that a person won't say something that's a bit off the wall. Remember Linus Pauling the other day, who, as we spoke, wolfed down 12,000 milligrams of vitamin C? Linus Pauling won 2 Nobel Prizes, the first one much more impressive, much more meaningful, I suspect, the one for chemistry in 1954. Anyway, I'm going to live dangerously and take a chance on subjecting you to someone who calls herself Lotus Weinstock. Lotus, that really isn't her first name. Weinstock is, but she changed her name to Lotus because that's her shtick. And she... Well, let me tell you, I try the best I can to let you in on what goes on behind the scenes in the radio business, in the broadcasting business as I know it. And hopefully, I will really get down to cases and complete that book that I've been warning you I would complete one day. Because there's a lot that you have to know. There's a lot that you have to know. For example, we constantly get mail. When I say we, I mean those of us who do programs, that say, "Dear Mr. Grant," or sometimes they really make a big hit with me. They say, "Dear broadcaster," or even "Dear DJ," or whatever. Enclosed, please find a copy of The Lotus Position by Lotus Weinstock. And then they tell you that she's a comedian, an actress, a dancer, a screenwriter. She's so successful, you wonder how in the heck she has time to go around being interviewed on any and every program she can get her mitts on. And here she's out with a $2.95 paperback that's supposed to, it's supposed to make Irma Bombeck look like a lady funeral director. That's how clever she is. And it tells you about all the other programs she's been on, and anyway, it makes you wonder. If she's so successful, anyway, we'll meet her. 15 persons this past weekend were killed in New York City alone, including an 86-year-old woman. 4 people were seriously wounded in a bloody weekend of shootings and stabbings. And I'm going to quote now, "It was unusually violent," said a police spokesman of the brutal weekend. That weekend ended with the murder of an 86-year-old Brooklyn woman, Lena Graffio, of 4140 DeKalb Avenue, found fully clothed, suffocated in her ransacked apartment. It was likely she was the victim of a heartless robber who did not want to leave any witnesses. Poor thing was found on her bed. No visible evidence of a struggle. How could an 86-year-old woman struggle with one of those mutants, with one of those marauders, with one of those predators? She joins a pantheon of victims in her own category alone. I'm talking about aged people for the most part living alone, people with just the meager necessities to get by, people who live with a fortress mentality because they know that they live in a very hostile environment. And anybody who has a shred of decency in him would have to think that could very well have been my own mother. Is this the way our senior citizens must go? The fact of the matter is that another report, which was released over the weekend, says that virtually every crime of violence committed in America today, that's their words. Oh, they're their words, not mine. Virtually every crime committed in America today of violence is committed by someone who has already been convicted of a previous crime of violence. Now, the question is, if they've already been convicted of a previous crime of violence, what are they doing on the loose? I want to know. What we need is, he's gone. John Wayne's gone. I was going to say, we need him. On his horse. Riding up Webster Avenue, for example. Riding up Webster Avenue, or riding on 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn. Or riding on Willis Avenue in the South Bronx. Or Herkimer Streets in Beaver in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn. Or riding in Long Island City. I could go on, but I mean, these are just some of the places where these horrible crimes took place. Gunplay, knifings, leaving 15 dead around this town. Are you proud of that? And we're going to talk to a man who's worried about nuclear holocaust, while the Holocaust goes on right under our noses, day in, day out, day in, day out. Know how I feel about some of the dangers facing an extension, a surviving, a thriving of life in these United States as we have known it. Some people were surprised that Theodore White, Teddy White, said that bilingualism was probably the most dangerous element facing our country internally. Those of you who have listened any length of time to me know I have put it high on the agenda of dangers facing our great republic. Therefore, let me tell you how joyously I feel about the fact that a federal judge says it will be up to the people of the United States and not the courts to decide whether official U.S. government forms should be printed in Spanish. It's very rare that I get a chance to praise a judge, but I praise Judge Edward R. Neher. He said the national language of the United States is English. The national language of the United States is English. He said that as he dismissed a suit to have certain Social Security forms printed in Spanish. The suit was filed on behalf of Spanish-speaking people in this country. The petition claimed that the lack of Spanish language forms in federal disability insurance and welfare programs, quote, denies Hispanic applicants and recipients equal access to and meaningful participation in the benefits program, and is therefore unconstitutional. Discussing the matter for 24 pages before deciding the class action suit was unsuccessful, Neher said, while plaintiffs may feel that such a policy is unwise or inequitable, such belief is, of course, an insufficient basis on which to conclude that it is unconstitutional. Such decisions must be made through the democratic process, not by order of a federal court. The judge who sits in Brooklyn noted that the plaintiffs had claimed the government discriminated against Spanish-speaking people, quote, on the basis of national origin, by failing to supply materials in the primary language of a governmental beneficiary, in this case Spanish forms and interpreters. The judge said, while this court appreciates the difficulty recent immigrants may initially encounter with the English language, we cannot say that the Constitution mandates a multilingual government. Oh, God bless Judge Neher. May the good Lord provide us with more. See? Once in a while, sanity wins out.
John, Bob.
Yeah, hello, John.
From New Jersey, Bob.
Yeah, John.
Look, I've been listening for years, and, years on WMCA anyway, and since you came on, I've been listening to you. Before that was WOR or whatever it is. That's immaterial. I want to talk about I'm a retired federal employee. Before you get mad, though, I mean, can I explain something?
You want to apologize? Okay.
Well, hello?
Yeah, I'm listening, John.
Okay, yeah. About Social Security merging with the federal pension. A point I want to make is if you quit your job or be fired from your job, you go on.
John, you're making me nervous. What's going on?
Because I can't believe I'm talking to you. That's the point.
I know it's John. I know. I'm royalty, John. But please, I look upon everybody with equanimity, whatever that means. Go ahead, John.
Bob, can anybody see me? No. That's the main thing.
Can anybody what?
See me. This is not television. Sometimes you say you wish you were on television.
Oh.
That's my wife cooking. Listen, Bob.
What is your wife making?
Well, tonight we were having shish kebab. She's eating trout, and I'm eating shish kebab because I don't like fish.
Okay, I'm glad to get that report. Now, John, what about the fact that you don't want the governmental employees to be attached to Social Security? Why not?
Point. I worked 30 years in the post office. First of all, I was in the Marine Corps, so I spent 2.5 years. That was added on to my pension.
Okay.
Follow me?
Yeah.
It's because it's federal. Now, you work in the radio, and I don't know if you've been in the service or not, that's immaterial. But a private job, let's put it that way. A private job, you quit or you're fired. Or whichever, laid off, whichever you want to put it. If you quit...
You're making me nervous with all this quit or laid off. Now, what is your point, John?
The point is that you go on unemployment. A federal employee when he quits his federal job, he don't go on unemployment because he's not entitled to it. Second, I put 30 straight years. How many years did you put on? You came from California, so I don't know what station. I can't say you worked for the state, federal, what. You know, you understand what I'm saying? You worked on a program.
What's in the shish kebab, John?
No, listen to me, Bob. I mean, I'm trying to be on your side. But what I'm trying to say is that I put 30 years straight service in the service. I paid 7.5% or 6% when it first started in 1950. Then it became...
Yeah, but you've been a gold brick all these years, John.
You know, Bob, you're something. What do you think you're doing?
Isn't that true, John?
Just what?
I gotta tell you, John, some of your fellow employees called me before you did. They said, John's going to call you. He's been at Goldbrook.
And nobody called you, Bob.
They tipped me off, John.
I was your goomba. I mean, you don't give him nothing. Now I got to be... What do I have to act like a... And cut me off, Bob, please.
Why should I cut you off?
Because you don't want to hear nonsense. You've been knocking the federal employees week after week after week. No. You understand what I'm trying to say?
How about year after year after year, John?
I mean,
I didn't even mention federal employees in the last...
I make so that you...
When's the last time I mentioned federal employees?
Security. I'm not entitled to unemployment.
John, you said the missus was having trout?
That's my first year and a half on retirement, because I'm retired.
What's your wife's name, John?
And what's yours, ma'am, sir?
No, what is your wife's name?
What's yours?
Because I'll tell you why I'm asking you what her first name is. I want you to put her on the phone. I want to talk to her.
Marge.
Marge, okay.
Yeah.
I'll find out from Marge what's the matter with John.
Well,
I'll find out from Marge what's the matter with John.
Well, I don't understand. You know, everything...
John, will you put Marge on, please? I want to find out what's the matter.
The Goomba was on...
Forget about the Goomba, will you? Forget about the Goomba. He doesn't call anymore. Marge, would you put Marge on? I'm getting nervous. Marge?
Yes.
Marge, what's John all upset about? Why is he upset?
Well, only because he's been listening to you with the, and what you've been saying about federal employees. I haven't followed it myself too much, but lately he just feels that you're kind of not on the side of the federal employee.
Well, I haven't even mentioned federal employees today. That's why I don't understand. Tell you what, you tell John to enjoy his shish kebab. Tell him I think he's a great guy. Tell him I'm not against him. And tell him I appreciate the fact that he called. But I have nothing against John.
Oh, I'm sure you have nothing against John. And he hasn't, except for this question of the federal...
And I don't even have anything against federal employees. I think there have been too many of them in the past, but we got the numbers down a little bit now. John, Marge is very nice, John.
Put John on the spot. I mean,
John, Marge is a very nice lady. I think you're a lucky man.
I'd love to have you over at my house, I'll tell you the truth, Bob.
Well, if I came over to your house, you know what? I wouldn't eat the shish kebab. I'd eat the fish.
Wait, first, here's what you're going to eat.
I'd eat the trout.
Not only trout, you're going to eat what Barry Farber would eat if he was here also, if the both of you were here.
What would he eat?
Eat stuffed cabbage, paprikash chicken. You listening? Carpastage gorska. This is all Hungarian stuff.
I see.
Same colors are Italian color, you know, red, white, and green, all right.
I'll bet you your wife is beautiful. If she's Hungarian, you know what?
Yes.
I've never seen a Hungarian woman that wasn't ravishingly beautiful. That's the truth.
Forgive me if I yelled at you.
John, there's nothing to forgive. You're a great guy. I appreciate your call. I only wish we had more time to talk. Will you call again, John?
Will I call again?
Yeah.
I hope you come over here first. I hope you take my address and come over here.
I wish I could, John.
She makes a cherry cheesecake.
Oh, I'm coming right over. Get John's address. I got to get that cherry cheesecake, but I got to go. Hey, don't grab on. Some old business. Stephen Moriak of Jersey City writes, with regard to Congressman John LeBoutillier from New York, who proposes sending our hardened criminals to an isolated island off the Alaskan coast, I think the general idea may have some merit. However, the location is all wrong. The hardened criminals should be sent to our naval installation at Guantanamo, Cuba, and each criminal should be given simple, accurate instructions as to where the holes are in the fence. I like that. Straight ahead is People magazine on special edition. Get Gaddafi. I'm very concerned over the news report that we had just a moment ago concerning the fact that a man in this particular case happens to be the state of Oregon. It doesn't make any difference where, though, whether it's Oregon, New York, Arizona, Washington. In this particular case, they're talking about a man guilty of murder, talking about a man who was apprehended, was tried, was convicted, talking about a man who had all the rules of evidence, talking about a man who had due process. We're talking about a man who was found guilty by 12 of his peers. But even more so, we're talking about a judicial system. Now hear this, a judicial system that doesn't say the man was innocent, that doesn't say the evidence indicates he was not guilty. We're talking about a judiciary that says, rather, oh, the fact that he was guilty of murder is secondary. His constitutional rights may have been violated. Now, this is something I haven't been able to adjust to ever since the Miranda decision. And by the way, the interesting thing about Miranda, they didn't read him his rights, and therein lies the tale. But the interesting thing about Miranda is, after he was let loose, the judge involved was asked, but did he commit the crime? And the judge said, that's beside the point. Now, this is going back to the middle 1960s, I believe about 1965. But the Supreme Court ruled that he had been denied his rights, and even though he was guilty of the crime of murder, they let him go. It wasn't too long after that, Miranda was killed in a shootout, a knifing with some other miscreant. Anyway, this is what continues to boggle the mind, and that is that high crime and the high court have given us a legacy which I want to talk about, and I'd like to hear you talk about.
Sound like that person had a little problem on the telephone before me. Hello, Bob. How are you today?
What's on your mind, sir?
Well, I'd like to know what I can do as a white citizen to protect myself.
Well, I'll tell you what. First thing you could do, sir, is go to the Lee Strasberg or the Adler School of Acting and learn how to do a whatever it is you're trying to imitate. Not being a human being, though, it would be very difficult. But I congratulate you anyway for proving once again that there is something to the theory that a full moon does create porous rocks. You heard earlier in our news with our Associated Press correspondent reporting about the High Court ruling concerning the overturning of a conviction of a person who was guilty of the crime of murder. Did you hear that? Let me underline that. He was guilty of the crime of murder. He was guilty. And yet, the conviction thrown out because of a technicality. What does that say about us? What does that say about us as a people? Well, I think, and look, I'm just one guy talking to some other people. I think all too often when you're watching the media, listening to the media, people try to be so phony, they try to impress you so much with various terms, legal, medical, what have you, that nobody's communicating. Well, let's try to point out something here. Let's try to communicate. Let's take another case. It's just classic case. And it ties in with the Tylenol murders. It ties in because someone identified as James W. Lewis, which is an alias, by the way, whose fingerprints had been found on the extortion letter sent to the company manufacturing Tylenol, and who appeared to be the man in the grainy photograph where Paula Prince was seen buying the poison fatal bottle of pills, but was not, brings to mind this report in In poring over some background on James Lewis, listen to this. I'm going to quote. In 1978, Mr. Lewis was charged with murder in the slaying of Raymond West, a 72-year-old Kansas City man who had hired Mr. Lewis as an accountant. Mr. West's dismembered and decomposed body was found hanging from a pulley in the attic the same day Mr. Lewis tried to cash a forged check on his account. Are you ready for this? I hope you're sitting down. If you're driving, get over to the side of the road real quick. The case was dismissed when the judge found that the police did not inform Mr. Lewis of his rights at the time of his arrest. I'm reminded of what Mayor Kahana, of all people, said to Pat Buchanan recently when he and Mr. Buchanan were discussing the insanity of the way we deal with the crime in this country. And Mayor Kahana said to Pat, those who are merciful toward the cruel, quoting the Talmud, are destined to be cruel toward the merciful. Keep that in mind. That's the Talmudic injunction. Now, a pattern of fraud and extortion is not new for Mr. Lewis. The Attorney General of Illinois was quoted in the same article. Mr. Lewis and his wife could be responsible for the Tylenol murders. They could be. We don't say they are, but they could be. Well, if so, then the murder of Paula Prince and 6 others should be laid directly to the final account of the Warren Court and to Earl Warren, Bill Douglas, Thurgood Marshall, and Bill Brennan in particular. When all the definitive biographies are written of these great progressives and each of the testimonials to the Warren Court, we should recall Paula Prince and the other innocent victims running probably now in the hundreds, if not thousands, of the Miranda decision these justices handed down in 1966. Years ago, it was a rarity that a man walked free because the constable erred. Now it is commonplace in Maryland. One James Mclean was recently convicted of hurling a 10-month-old infant down an 11-story trash chute. After he confessed to the crime, he got life. Last year, the Maryland Court of Appeals turned Mclean loose because he had not been taken before a court commissioner until 12 minutes after the allotted 24 hours after his arrest. So you see, again, here's another case of somebody of them knowing that he was guilty but still turning him loose. In California, a killer of 3 who confessed off the record was turned loose because the California Supreme Court declared an off-the-record confession was inadmissible. Even the killer's attorney expressed astonishment when the United States Supreme Court refused to review the California decision. And let me tell you this. 10 years ago, a man who admitted clubbing to death his grandmother, his sister, and mother in Pennsylvania was released because the officer giving him his Miranda warning told him anything he said could be used for or against him. And the court held that including the word for vitiated the confession. See, the officer, he was on the dumb side. It doesn't say for or against. It just says against. And he put in the word for, and that killed the confession. So the guy walked. He walked. Forget about the fact that his grandmother, his sister, and his mother had their throats cut. Forget about it. That's unimportant. What's important is that some law enforcement officer didn't read him his rights correctly. This is a sane country. In recent years, too many Americans have accorded the decisions of the United States Supreme Court a tug of the forelock deference, undeserved on their merits. And let me leave you with this, and then we'll get on to other things. To love one's country, Edmund Burke said, one's country ought to be lovely. Well, to respect the decisions of the High Court, those decisions ought at the least to be respectable. The case of the fellow O'Brien.
O'Brien, yeah.
Yeah. Take the case of Candy O'Brien, as they call him.
Candy O'Brien, right.
The monster who poisoned his own son on Halloween in 1974. he was to have been executed last week. That's fully 8 years after the crime.
Yesterday, Halloween, I think. Halloween, yeah.
Yeah, he was supposed to have been executed on Halloween night. But as I predicted, he got a stay of execution.
By the Supreme Court.
By the Supreme Court.
The same court that wouldn't even hear his case before.
That's right.
Yep.
I want to ask you a question. If you had a 7-year-old daughter, and that 7-year-old daughter was abducted by a monster called a sex offender, and that sex offender mutilated, raped, and murdered your daughter, and you had a gun, and it was loaded, and you were in the same room with that monster who murdered your lovely, precious little daughter, do you think you would shoot that worm? Well, there's a woman who did do just that. She shot and killed her daughter's killer in court. That's right. She went to the trial of Klaus Grabowski. Grabowski had abducted her little 7-year-old daughter, Anna, and choked her to death. She went to the court to watch the trial. She had a gun, fired 8 shots at the 35-year-old skunk. Shot him right in the courtroom, hitting him 7 out of 8 times. And you know what? This woman is now on trial. Now, first of all, she shouldn't have been indicted. But let's watch and see whether she's not acquitted. But I don't think there's a parent walking the face of the earth that wouldn't want to do the same thing, and even non-parents. By the way, this did not happen in the United States. It happened in Lübeck, West Germany. So you see they're wacko all over.
Is Judge Bruce Wright the same Spring 'em Loose Bruce person?
Yes, there's only one Bruce Wright.
Oh, was he reelected?
Yes, he was.
Well,
Well, he couldn't miss. You see, he was on the liberal line in Manhattan.
oh,
Bruce Wright, Bruce, turn him loose, Bruce, was reelected. Well, I think it's tragic myself.
no,
But,
it's tragic.
no.
What is wrong with people? Don't they read?
Your guess is as good as mine, dear.
Hey, Bob, when all networks were supposed to show complete objectivity, I couldn't believe how subjective that pompous-ass Dan Rather was. It was just unreal.
For Jerry Brown.
What?
He didn't add the words for Jerry Brown. He just said, make sure you get out and vote.
But he did say, Bob, that...
He used the term, I beg you. He actually... See, Dan Rather is not a good ad-libber.
Right.
Dan Rather reads a teleprompter just about as good as Jane Pauling. And he is not a good ad-libber. He's proven that time and time again. He gets carried away. He said, I beg you. He used that phrase, I beg you to get out and vote. But he didn't say for Jerry Brown. He did not add the words for Jerry Brown. More than ever, I am baffled by the overwhelming left-leaning of the media. You know, every Tuesday night, for example, for a long time, I worked with Newsweek on Special Edition, and I got an education as to how far to the left their rank-and-file people lean. But the big surprise was when they were replaced by the Time magazine people, how they, too, are way over to the left. And again and again and again. So it is amazing that the media does as reasonably well, considering the fact that their biases are all on the left.
I know, just...
As a political watcher and an almost candidate myself, I say almost because at the last minute I had a slight remission and a little touch of sanity crept back into my mind, and I didn't run. But the fact is, we have politicians proving that democracy is a fragile thing because there isn't a man in Washington whether it be Senator Robert Dole, Republican, in the Senate, or whether it be the Speaker of the House himself, Democrat Tip O'Neill, there isn't a man in Washington or a woman in Washington who doesn't know that the clock has tolled midnight for the Social Security program. There isn't a politician anywhere who doesn't know that action must be taken to save this program. Demagoguery would have it, as one senator from Florida went around the nation saying, "We don't tamper with Social Security. Don't tamper with Social Security." That's what he kept saying. That's what he still says. One of the greatest arguments for euthanasia ever to exist. All around the country saying, don't tamper. You gotta save it, not tamper with it. Save it. And how are you gonna save it? Well, there's two ways you save it. Either you raise the taxes on what those hardworking young people are paying already, or you bring some sense to the entitlements program. You don't have to cut what people are getting now, but do something about the automatic raises they get. But no matter what is done, the fact of the matter is, irresponsible, opportunistic politicians have made a political football out of this thing, and as long as it is a political football, we're going to all lose. So, I see that the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, who looks sleepier and sleepier. Did you ever notice? I wonder why his eyelids are getting so heavy. What is it? Anyway, the Speaker should explain how the Democrats propose to shore up the finances of the Social Security system. Explain how, Mr. Speaker. Explain how.
Aren't the players in the camp?
Because not enough guys have come forth and have voted against.
If they're behind the union.
All right, what's your opinion, Pat? What do you think should happen? Do you think?
My thing is, well, whatever the union wants, it's got to be a union management problem.
Gee, that was brilliant.
Me was. You put on Dave Jennings, you brought him to the studio.
Yeah, he's my stooge.
Yeah, he's a nice fella. And he's a waiter down in the thing. Didn't this guy graduate from college?
Pat, you know, if you had called me a few years ago,
Yeah?
I would have called you by this time no gavon.
Hey, I know about that too.
I would imagine you'd know all about gavon.
Go Pasquale. Up in New York.
What do you do for a living, Pat?
What do? I do this and that.
You do this and that?
Yeah.
I bet you take numbers.
Well, I do whatever I do.
You take numbers?
You could bet your own thing.
Yeah, I'll bet you that's what you do.
What difference does it make?
I'll bet you're suffering because of the NFL strike.
The city takes numbers.
Yeah, well, you take numbers. Are you working with Nick up there in Gabe's Candy Store on Arthur Avenue?
What?
Are you taking bets on Arthur Avenue?
Forget the number. I go to Arthur Avenue to eat.
Okay.
Like I go down to Little Italy, and I happen to be Irish.
Irish?
Yeah, I'm Irish.
I never heard an Irishman sound more Italian in my life. I'm relieved. Guess what? Hey, Pat, guess what? I'm relieved to find out you're Irish.
Thank you. Very kindly. But
That's the best news I've had all day.
you bring in Dave Jennings,
Yeah?
kicker, who never gets hit,
So what?
waiter,
That shows.
the articulate fellow. So therefore, I'll put Dave Jennings on. And he's against the union. I couldn't care less who is in the union, who won, who did this, who...
Well, what do you call it about then?
Huh?
What do you call it about?
I want you to tell you, bring another guy on the line who gets hit.
No, you know why I don't want to bring a guy who gets hit?
The lineman.
Because then his brains might be scrambled.
Huh?
then his brains might be scrambled.
You know better than that.
Yeah, so where do you live up in the Bronx, Pelham?
No, in Riverdale.
Riverdale? Oh, that doesn't qualify. That's not really the Bronx.
I was born in Harlem. Why shouldn't I live in Riverdale?
Okay, listen. May I ask you a question, Pat?
Ask.
What are you drinking this afternoon? What's your pleasure?
Well, when I finish, I'm going to have a little black coffee.
Yeah, but what are you having now?
The zone.
What are you having now?
Now,
Yeah.
I'm having my pleasure.
Now, what are you having? Come on.
In bed.
Huh?
Taking bed.
Okay, Pat.
Hi.
Hey, listen, I really appreciated your call. I don't know what you said, but I appreciated it anyway.
You don't know what I said.
I like your style.
Doesn't really matter then.
Okay, you're really New York, Pat. You're really New York. Thank you, Pat.
You're a nice fella.
I am.
And I know you're.
Okay, listen, Pat. I gotta go.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, can I go? Okay, thanks.
Where are you going?
I'm going to take another call.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, listen.
What?
Do me a favor.
Yeah.
The next time you put a player on,
Yeah.
one of them guys who gets his head mashed.
Okay, we're going to have Big Stan Ogadowski on in the next half hour just for you.
Don't play for...
Okay, we're going to have Stan Ogadowski. We'll have Stan Ogadowski, okay?
Hey.
Okay.
Robert?
Yeah.
Hey, babe, take care.
Okay.
Have a nice afternoon.
You too, Pat.
Goodbye.
All right. As Pat, he believes that the unions can do no wrong. And he wants me to have a lineman who gets hit. Wants me to have a... So we'll have Stan Ogadowski a little later. A great big left tackle. For the Mayapak Marauders. We'll have him... Listen, Vince, we're hearing all this political hot air, and very few politicians really have the guts to come right out and tell you how they would handle the situation. What I object to are the people like Tip O'Neill, and I just use him as an example. He's certainly not the only one. People who say Social Security's in trouble. We mustn't let it die. And yet, on the other hand, they turn around and say, don't tamper with it, like Claude Pepper. That's all he does. Don't tamper with Social Security. That's all he can say. And yet, if you said, Congressman Pepper, what would you do to save Social Security? You know what his answer is? I saw him, so help me. May I croak right here at this microphone if I'm making this up. I saw him on a television interview. And the gushy interviewer said, well, Congressman, would you agree that Social Security is in trouble? And he couldn't answer that. He couldn't answer that. Finally, he said, yeah, there was some trouble with Social Security. And then the person asked him, well, what would he suggest to save the program? And his answer was, don't tamper with Social Security. He kept saying it until they ran out of time. You know, they finally had to go to a commercial, you know.
Yeah.
But that's all he can say. You wind him up, he says, don't tamper with Social Security. Step in the right direction. You know, there's always somebody to cut, because, let's face it, especially in government jobs, for every person actually working, you got 20 gold bricks. Have a lineman on there and have him talk about the strike. So, we're going to have Stan Ogadowski. Stan Ogadowski, one of the great left tackles of all time, as our guest right now. Stan, what do you think? What do you think of the football strike?
Oh, it's better than a spare.
What's that?
Strike is better than a spare.
A strike is better than a spare.
Yeah.
That's true, in bowling. But what about in football?
Oh, a home run.
A home run in football?
Touchdown. I meant to say touchdown.
We had a caller from the Bronx, Pat.
A real cavone.
Well, he was a nice guy.
A cavone.
Okay, anyway, Pat said he thought that instead of having a guy like Dave Jennings, who never even got his uniform dirty in a game, I should have a real football player who was in the trenches, slugging it out, getting his head bashed in every Sunday. And that's why we had you.
Because of the hole in my head?
I didn't notice, but now that you mention it, interesting. Anyway, Stan Ogadowski, what do you think of the strike? Do you think the players are doing the right thing?
Players never did the right thing. They don't do the right thing, Bob.
I see. What about Ed Garvey?
Who?
Ed Garvey.
Oh, played first base for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
No, that's Steve Garvey.
Oh, well, that must be his brother.
Stan, are you sure that you play in the NFL?
Oh, no, I never played in the NFL. I played for the Rahway Ramblers when I was doing time at Rahway.
All right. That's Stan Ogadowski, folks. Stan Ogadowski. And I hope you learned something from listening to that brilliant left tackle. They put it in, and not even a Wombata from Yonkers calls. Can you imagine that? For those of you who want to know, Wombata from Yonkers is not the Bonanima. He's still alive and well, but he just doesn't call anymore. That's all. What do you want from me?
This is Richard from Lake Ronkonkoma Public.
Yes, Richard.
And I'm at my therapist's office, and I just had to stop and tell you that these football people are insane. They're insane.
Well, you know, I think they thought that the NFL was going to roll over and play dead for them. I really do.
Bob, who cares? There's too much violence to begin with, and who cares that they're out of action?
Well, to tell you the truth, a lot of people do care because pro football was the most watched sport in America on television. You see, it's strictly a television sport. The goofs who actually go to the stadia go only because they like to fall out of the stands drunk, you see.
Mm-hmm.
It's a studio, it's a television sport is what it is.
Well, this Stan person, I mean, his head must have been kicked in about several times a day for the last 40 years.
Oh, you mean Stan Ogadowski?
How do you say the last name?
Ogadowski.
Ogadowski.
Yes. Ogadowski.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He played for the Browns, I think.
He played for the Browns. He was a great left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to throw a lot of blocks. And a lot of times he'd forget his helmet.
Does he have dents in his head, Bob?
I beg your pardon?
Does he have dents in his head?
Yes, I think so. But he used to forget his helmet.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd put on an ace cap, and he'd play with his ace cap.
I see. Well, I mean, any person that would even think that football
Yes.
should be back in, well, it's just too violent for me.
By the way, are you going to the Ramrod tonight, Richard?
No, I'm in a softball league, slow pitch.
Oh, I see. I thought you hung around the Ramrod over there on the west side.
Oh, no, Bob, I'm not a drinking person myself.
Well, you guys don't go there to drink primarily.
They don't?
No, they go there to meet other guys.
Well, I never, I'm insulted, Mr. Grant, I really am. I socialize occasionally, but not in places like that.
Not in places like that.
No.
Oh, well, where do you socialize?
Well, we go to the Lotus Blossom in Lake Ronkonkoma.
Oh, the Lotus Blossom.
Yes, it's a sushi place.
Wait a minute. Are you engaged to a fellow by the name of Bruce?
Well, his last name is Papona.
Mr. Papona?
Mr. Papona.
I see. You're a secretary, aren't you?
That's correct. We talked, I guess, a few months ago.
Ah, yes. Richard of Ronkonkoma. I do recall you well, Richard.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Your favorite orchestra is Johnny Fagala and his band, right? Johnny Fagala, your favorite orchestra?
That's right, Bob.
Very good. Well, listen.
I used to play with the Cleveland Browns games many years ago.
I
think these football people are insane.
Okay.
Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Richard of Ronkonkoma, and he doesn't think much of Stan Ogadowski.
These football players have never been allowed to have a secret ballot. So there's no chance. It's always just a quick raise your hands, and most fellas are afraid of the peer pressure.
Yeah.
You know, Garvey isn't going to allow the players to have a secret ballot. That's out.
He'd get his goon squad after these guys.
Of course. So this guy said, I'd love to be playing. It's killing me not to be playing all week. So I said, why don't you play?
Yeah.
He said, because when they have a quick meeting, you got to quick put up your hands up and down, and Garvey will not give us a secret ballot.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct what you said. No question about it.
I'm sure that if they did have if he wasn't afraid of what the rank and file of the NFL thought he would be welcoming a secret ballot.
Bob, they've never had one secret ballot yet. All these fellas would like to be back playing. Every one of them.
And thanks to everyone for being with us today and for this week. That slams the lid on another week of broadcasting. Until Monday, Bob Grant reminding you, your influence counts. Use it, and more than ever, get Gaddafi. Grant, hello.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
How are you?
All right, sir.
This is John LeBoutillier.
John LeBoutillier, you're still a United States congressman. A lot of people thought you'd be in there for a long time. What happened?
Well, of course, I lost last Tuesday, 52% to 48%, so I won't be in there after January 5th or whatever, but I could be back again in the future. I'm only 29, and losing is only a loss. If you quit, you don't run again. And a lot of different things happen, there's no question. In many cases, I hurt myself because I was too outspoken, maybe, and a little bit too frank about the way I thought Washington had been run. That hurt. I'm afraid that supporting President Reagan, which I do and will continue to do, didn't play so well up here in the Northeast in a lot of areas, even though I think what he's doing is correct. And I think I also got hurt in this process we have called redistricting. I had a new district, 65% of which I never had run in before. So I really wasn't very well known, and I hadn't worked the area very well. So you add it all up, and I lost.
So, for better or for worse, you became somewhat of a celebrity. When you go back to Congress, and you probably will, when you go back in the public office, do you think you'll conduct yourself a little differently?
Well, you know, you always can kick yourself about various things, but I'll tell you something. When I got elected 2 years ago, and it seems like a million years ago to most people now, but in 1980, this country was very angry about the way government had been run. And a guy like me came along, 27 years old, and I was told by the people every night when I walked door to door, they said, you are like a breath of fresh air. Don't ever change. Go to Washington and shake things up. That was what they sent me to do. They told me that. And I could have gone down there and become, like most congressmen, just another guy sitting in the back row voting yes or no. But I sort of thought that's not my mission in life. I saw something I didn't like. I don't think Congress is run well. I know it's not run well if you look at the record. And I said, hey, I want to be different, and I want to say it, and I want to churn things up and get people riled up a little bit. Well, now you come to 1982, and all the people like me, people who are outspoken and different, like Ed Koch, Jerry Brown, Millicent Fenwick, all sorts of people who were different, we all got beaten this year. This year, the public doesn't want that. They wanted quiet, low-key, team player type of people. And that's what they're going to have.
I'm going to be on. I was misinformed.
I am going to be on tomorrow.
Oh, well, okay. Listen, at any rate, John, I thank you very much for calling the program.
Well, Bob, thank you, and thanks for all your good ideas always on the radio, because I listen to you all the time. I learn more from your show than just about anything else. And you serve a good purpose, and you're educating people every day about things that they need to hear about.
Now, if you had to do it all over again, would you still call Tip O'Neill, Charles Percy, Pat Moynihan, and a few thousand others those names?
Some of them I would, and some of them I wouldn't. I wouldn't change all of it, because I believe some of them... You know, no one's ever said they weren't true. They just said you shouldn't have said it. Well, sad state of affairs when you can't tell the truth, you know. Okay,
John. Thanks for the call. He's still a congressman. He will be up until the end of the year. John LeBoutillier on straight. And what a pretty head it is Denise Ventrano. Now, Denise learned how to carry a man twice her weight, but the fear she might let another firefighter down in the heat and smoke of a blaze made her quit the fire department a day before graduation. She came to her senses, and she realized that the hobnail boot crowd, which has been pushing to get women into the locker room and into the men's room and into the firefighters' room and into the police department, all these places where they really just plain don't belong, she woke up in time and said, hey, wait a minute, what am I trying to prove here? She had nothing to prove. And so the 5'6", 116-pound beauty, a day before she was to have graduated, got off the fire department. And I hope someday we come to our senses in the not-too-distant future and stop all this mishigas of forcing women to feel that they have to go through the firefighter school. And You know, it's like an unwritten law that no matter who gets in, sooner or later, usually sooner, they're going to ask for more taxes. And no matter who gets in, he's going to say, we have a shortfall. No matter who gets in, they're going to say, hey, we've got a debt problem here. Now, why? I want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, why does the cost of government have to keep going up and up and up? Why? Why do we accept it? It's like you talk about etched in stone. It must be etched in stone somewhere that the cost of government has to keep going up. Here you would think that they would improve efficiency, that thanks to computers and other modern miracles, they would be able to reduce the cost of government, and yet the cost of government keeps going up. You know why it keeps going up? Because they know they can always tap that sucker taxpayer. They can always tap him and tax him some more. Same way with Social Security. Yeah, that's why the slogan is, live worse for more. And you know, most of us have great sympathy when we see some battered woman. We want to get the skunk that did it and beat him up. I think it's a disgrace, it's a shame, it's a tragedy. How do you feel about this story? 9 weeks ago, some guy by the name of Johnny Campagna took a pitchfork and stabbed his girlfriend. Stabbed her. After a while, she, by the way, she was also beaten with the 8-pound pitchfork and a long ice scraper and a wooden pole. I mean, in addition to being stabbed, she was beat, hit over the head. She suffered 4 broken ribs. Her spleen had to be removed. The day after, she filed an additional assault and battery charge against Campagna. Her name, by the way, is Eleanor Giacalone. Guess what? Yesterday they got married. She withdrew the charges, the 3 counts of assault and battery. But the telling thing about this is when Eleanor said, I love Johnny because he's like me in so many ways. And here's a postscript to this story. Eleanor is a psychology graduate. You know, my father used to always say, God bless psychiatrists and psychologists. God bless them. They're crazier than anybody else.
On a basis of, I find that we have less and less franchise in New York State. There is absolutely no way that a small businessman like myself or somebody that works for a company in a non-union capacity is ever going to get any representation in this state anymore. The coalition of the public employees unions who are redistributing the wealth, and they make a deal, usually with the Democratic candidate, and there is no way of beating them when they get together with the welfare recipients and with the people that coddle criminals, and the whole liberal coalition. It is absolutely unbeatable in this state. It is driving businessmen out.
Yeah.
We cannot abide these taxes anymore. I made a tour of the Southeast, and I'm going to have to move my business. I found out today that it's not even partisan politics. Fran Purcell made a deal with the CSEA in his last election for county executive. Now it was announced that we're going to get a 13% increase in our taxes because he gave them 30% increase over 2 years. Now, I understand New York City is in trouble, and they're still promising the public service employees a raise. I mean, in 1984, they're giving out the raises for 1984. How can you sign a contract for 3 years? I may not have a business 3 years from now. How am I going to pay those raises?
Okay. I understand what you're saying, and I thank you very much, sir. Super dip fishy. What is that? It's a fish combination dish made in a delicious sauce for 2 people. I know some people that they go in alone and they order it. They call those guys carnarud. You don't know what a carnarud is? Ask your grandma. Call up grandma and say, hey, Grandma, what's a carnarud? She said, that's a you unknown. Anyway.
The government keeps spending money. I mean, the dollar that was worth $1 in 1967 is now worth 30 cents. And I think that an economy which is dependent so much on disposable income, private people to invest and to buy things, is only being suffocated by a huge budget, because if we're going to pay over 40% or 50% of our income in taxes, and then we're going to pay the rent, and then we're going to pay our bills, Con Edison, and things that we need for necessities, there's not going to be any money to spur any kind of recovery at all. And I think that for years we've been kidding ourselves that we could do everything, that we could have social responsibilities that we can meet, and at the same time have a vibrant private sector to spur a private economy.
Well, that's one of the main reasons I have predicted that by approximately the year 2000, a couple of years, we will not have a form of government as we know it today. As a matter of fact, it's in a constant state of flux already. And one of the major reasons is these programs, with the help of short-sighted unions and with the help of selfish people who don't realize the importance of productivity, that the buying power of the American public is so destroyed. The inability of private investment to work its will, work its way, to do what it should do, is so diminished.
Emasculated.
That's right.
Yeah, and it goes even further than that. I mean, there was just a gubernatorial election in New York where one of the candidates said that if he gets elected, he's going to change the Taylor law. And in this city alone, I figured that anybody who said that after what happened in the 60s and the 70s would get shot out of the barrel right away. And I think it just shows that the people don't know what they want. They clamor for...
Well, people are very childish. They're very immature.
They clamor for lower taxes, but they don't want to cut the programs to go along with that.
I have to laugh. People talk about Reaganomics and try to call it a failure. Mitterrand economics in France is a failure. Olaf Palmenomics in Sweden is a failure. Thatcheronomics is a failure. Country after country after country is having great economic difficulties. Now,
right, but there's a difference. Is that Reagan has got some movement on a 12% inflation rate and a 21% interest,
right,
which Jimmy Carter jacked up from 4%.
But you see, the media, the Dan Rathers, and all the sanctimonious pundits, all the people who think that their job is not just to report what goes on, but to tell you what it means, to interpret, to suit their own prejudice, their own predilections, that these people who have overstepped their bounds long ago have told the American people things that are not true, have made agendas that have not existed, have created issues that are not real issues, and have given us fears that were not viable fears. But they set the tone. They called the shots. I saw a brilliant article in one of yesterday's newspapers, I think it was Terrell, in the New York Post. And he says there are three parties in this country: the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the media party. And he says the media is more powerful than the Republicans and the Democrats put together. You know something? Mr. Terrell may be just right.
Listen, Bob, you guys have been taking too many punches at the worker who's got a union card.
What do you mean by you guys? I'm just one guy.
Well, I've heard this on the air now. Just recently, you had a guy on the air pointing out about the union employee. I've heard a lot of things since Mario has been elected.
Don't give me that. You've heard plenty from me all these years. I haven't changed since he's elected.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't say you changed.
You said I've heard a lot since he's elected.
Well, I've heard a lot of people talk about how many union employees got him elected.
Oh, they did.
Well, they did. That's true. But I've heard a lot of things about union employees being slackers.
They are?
They are not.
Well, are you kidding? Listen, most of these guys that are in Victor Gottbaum's DC-37 figure that they got a lock on a job. All they got to do is keep breathing, show up a certain amount of time, and that's it. I don't even call them city workers. I call them city loafers.
No, that's not fair.
Yeah, it is. Listen, what do you think one of the reasons OTP's going on a drain?
Are they city?
Because for every worker they have there, they got 10 people sitting on their Ogul, you know? You know what I mean, pal? Listen, Vic, don't get me started, Vic. You get me nervous. And looked at the newspapers and watched television. There it was, big as life, or should we say as big as death. The demise of a dictator, the demise of an enemy of freedom, the death of a man who never once really spoke about the human spirit. I was in Prague, Czechoslovakia in 1968. It was called the Prague Spring. I loved every moment of it, sharing with those Czechoslovaks a sweet taste of freedom, made all the sweeter because it had been denied for so long. And I could say many things about that time, but on this day, the day that the Kremlin announces the death of that enemy of freedom, Leonid Brezhnev, I say this: whenever the Czechoslovaks would talk about the plans they had for the future, whenever they would comment on their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations, I would ask them, how long do you think Brezhnev will let this go on? And they would grow sad, their eyes would look down, and they would change the subject. And it wasn't too long after that the Soviet tanks came in and once again smashed that fragile commodity called freedom in Czechoslovakia. We think we're going to make comment to someone who is described to us as the Deputy Assistant Ambassador to the UN from the Soviet Union, and we hope to have Yuri Kurganov on our newsmaker line in just a moment.
Matter of fact, no one I have talked to at this time has knowledge of who will be the successor. The Politburo will meet and discuss that in due time, but because this is the period of national mourning in the Soviet Union, it is inappropriate to conjecture.
I see. Mr. Kurganov, do you have a preference? Do you have a personal choice?
Of course, again, it is inappropriate for me to make a statement like that, but I must say that my faith in the decision to be made by the Politburo is complete. I have no doubt that they will make the correct decision on choice, and I will support it, and we all are confident that the solution will be excellent.
A Deputy Assistant Ambassador working in the UN mission, and his comments, very guarded, of course, and the interesting thing is that he could not tell us who his choice to succeed Brezhnev would be. He couldn't tell us. He can't have a choice. Sometimes when people like me interview someone like him, we forget and we think we're interviewing an American who could tell you he likes this guy or he likes that guy. But they can't have personal choices, at least not on this low level.
Hello, Bob?
Yes?
Yes, Bob, today is a red letter day, because today Leonid Brezhnev has finally become a good red. And rather than go over the litany of crimes that he was responsible for, that he perpetrated upon free peoples, I'd like to say that in your interview with that individual from the UN, that we can judge a political system's maturity by how peacefully power passes during times of political crisis. The United States is a politically mature country because with the death of Roosevelt during the war, the assassination of John Kennedy, and the resignation of President Nixon, we didn't have the palace infighting that is going on right at this second in the Soviet entity.
Right.
And in fact, the Roman Empire was never able to solve that problem. And yet 2,000 years later, the Soviets, for all of their vaunted armies, for all of their empire, has not yet been able to solve that problem. And I think this represents the kind of alternative, the kind of political system that they have to all those apologists for the Kremlin that exist in this country. And
I think the fact that we have to play the diplomatic game and send expression of condolence is sad, because the real fact of the matter is the world has lost another tyrant, a long line in a long history of tyrants, a brutal murderer, a person who cared nothing for human dignity, nothing for human freedom, who has kept his own people in bondage, who crushed the Czechoslovak desire for freedom, who at the moment of his death was trying to crush every last vestige of Polish freedom, who sent 150,000 troops into Afghanistan, who has spent every moment of his adult life plotting to undermine the democracies of the world. No, there's no question that Leonid Brezhnev was a swine, and I can say that because I'm not in public office. But anybody who thinks otherwise is sadly misinformed.
Oh, yes, and you know, Bob, it's unfortunate that we don't have leaders in the West with the fortitude to seize this moment and exploit the chinks in the Soviet armor in Eastern Europe and help the Polish people regain their freedom while the leadership, the thugs and outlaws, are in disarray over there. And that is why, unfortunately, the nations of the West are once again vacillating as they did during the 1930s.
Well, not only vacillating, but you have the likes of Willy Brandt, who paid great tribute to Leonid Brezhnev. And it just, I think it tells us more about what Leonid, not about what Leonid Brezhnev was, but about what Willy Brandt wasn't. Willy Brandt was not obviously a believer in total democracy. He was more of a socialist than anything else. So that tells us a lot about that. Thank you very much, Frank. All right.
I want to express my shock at a recent statement on the news indicating that President Reagan has expressed his condolence at the demise of that despot and tyrant Leonid Brezhnev. I think this is a day for celebration, and I only wish that all the communist leaders would go that way.
Well, there's really no point in celebrating, because just as Malenkov replaced Stalin, although Stalin was the worst, and just as Khrushchev replaced Malenkov, and just as Brezhnev replaced Khrushchev, some other commie fink will replace Brezhnev.
That's why I wish they would all croak.
Okay, Alan.
So,
you lay it right on the line. Thank you, Alan.
One thing, but why would the president express his condolence?
As I said, protocol, diplomatic protocol,
but what would
demands that he does when
the Soviet Union would declare war on the United States?
Well, Alan, you asked me why, and I'm telling you why.
Also,
there's a lot of hypocrisy in diplomatic protocol. You know, 57th Street, coming from the north, on the east side of 57th, and there, in front of a Duane Reade drugstore, it seemed as though it was a bazaar. I felt that suddenly I was back in old Jerusalem, because there were guys selling imitation Louis Vuitton purses, other guys selling sweaters, other guys selling this. Everybody was selling something. And all of a sudden, just like an old Jimmy Cagney movie, I heard one guy say, "Hey, geez, the cops." And with that, they grabbed all the phony Louis Vuitton purses and all the other junk, and they were off. I never saw a caravan pack and leave so quickly. Now, it just serves to illustrate a point. Number one, even when they have the approval by virtue of getting their vendors' licenses, I think it's a disgrace that a great city like this would become so tawdry and have these sidewalk entrepreneurs selling all this garbage. But to make it even worse, they don't even have the vendor's license, and they're on the run like snake oil salesmen going through southeast Oklahoma in 1910. And people smile as though it's something funny. I don't think it's funny at all.
Pull up, especially these diplomats. They pull up, they park any place they...
Oh, yeah, with the diplomat. I would like to get a tank, a Sherman tank, and just roll over all the diplomat cars. I mean, they get worse and worse, more brazen all the time.
Okay, you're going to bring a Sherman tank. That's impossible. You tear up the sidewalks, you'll get a summons.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to get a summons.
But get a girl, a guy with a screwdriver. That's all. Just a screwdriver.
A Phillips screwdriver or a regular screwdriver?
The hell with the expense. Buy 2 screwdrivers.
Okay, 2 screwdrivers. 2 screwdrivers, one with vodka, one with gin. Thank you. Parts at 8412 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn. Call 748-7411. That's 748-7411. And get Gaddafi. Do you know yourself? You know, we heard throughout the 60s and most of the 70s, too, for that matter, somebody was leaving his family or her family because they were going to go find themselves. Not only did they not find themselves, they never found their families, because nobody's seen them since. And although it's become a cliche, and although it's been beat to death by every hack writer for television and the motion pictures, and yes, even the Broadway theater, the fact is, most of us really don't know ourselves. Absolutely realize. Did you see him tell those stories about Leonid Brezhnev? Leonid Brezhnev apparently was a horny guy. So why should we be surprised? Having big bushy eyebrows doesn't keep a guy from being horny. He was a leg and tush man. I'm sorry. That's right, he was. I'm not sorry that he's dead. Matter of fact, I'm proud that the president didn't give a real phony baloney eulogy to the guy.
Also, as far as your question is concerned, let Mr. Reagan go to Russia and stay there.
Well, I expected that. I knew that some immature clod would call and say that when I posed the question about the funeral. Why do you say that, though? What'd you say your name was? Claude? I mean, what'd you say your name was? George? Are you there? No, he's not. He hung up. I guess that's what kids do when they say a naughty. They run away. That slams the lid on things for today and for this week. Straight ahead is special edition. I'll be looking for you on Monday at 4 o'clock. Get Gaddafi.
I wondered, those judges that the Democratic Party didn't file for on time?
They got in because the advertising to vote for the liberal line, row D, I believe it was so strong. The advertising was so strong that that's what happened. So Bruce, turn them loose, and all the rest of the bleeding hearts got elected. You remember the mayor? How am I doing, Eddie Koch? Who was turned it out, lost the election, probably more so because people were afraid of who'd take his place if he left the mayor's office. And they're the hard-nosed ones, and maybe Khrushchev was right. Maybe they will bury us someday.
Right now, at least we know that Brezhnev is best serving the world interests 6 feet underground, at least being alive.
I'm just sorry it didn't happen 18 years sooner. Thank you very much.
Take it easy.
Tomorrow, what a combination. Alice Rivlin, director of the Congressional Budget Office, and Gloria Leonard, porno star. Whatever that is. Get Gaddafi. Lawyer William Kunstler was ordered into a detention cell today by Justice Kenneth Brown when Kunstler demanded that the hearing for his client, James Dixon York, and co-defendant Anthony Laborde be halted because the defendants had been ordered out of the courtroom for making a disturbance. The hearing is being held to determine whether York and Laborde are persistent felons, which could make their sentences for the murder of police officer Richard Rennie more stringent. Rennie survived miraculously, but the same bullets that wounded Rennie killed Officer John Scarangella. And the jury, interestingly enough, acquitted them, can you believe this, acquitted Laborde and York of the murder of Scarangella, but convicted them of the attempted murder of Richard Rennie. If anybody can figure that one out, let me know, will you? And guess what? Illinois Democrat Adlai Stevenson wants a recount of the governor's race. The state elections board says incumbent Republican James Thompson beat him, but the margin is only about 5,000 votes. Richard Daley, where are you now when Adlai needs you? By the way, if there is any fairly presentable lady in the audience with a valise. Drop me a line, okay? Now, Mrs. C will write to me. There's a Mrs. C. She's really off her rocker. Violet C. Absolutely bonkers. No matter what I say in the air, she thinks I'm talking to her. Can you believe that? Well, you can believe anything, right?